Hello there, good evening, and welcome to another edition of Ed Live. This evening, we want to deal with a very, very important issue, a very topical issue that has been in the public domain for the past year. On December 21st, 2018, a no confidence motion was successfully passed in the National Assembly, rendering the David Granger government defeated. Simply means that elections should have been held within 3 months after the passage of that no confidence motion. Today marks exactly 1 year since the motion has been passed, and we know all that would have happened. This evening, what we want to do basically is to more or less a recap, to remind you of the major transgressions on the part of Granger and his ministers, his government, and all that happened over the past year. Also, we want to examine the whole issue of forced oil, and Granger, with all the fanfare, trying to declare an entire day National Petroleum Day. And so we want to discuss both issues. I have with me in studio no other than Joseph Hamilton, Member of Parliament of the People's Progressive Party, and of course one of the active persons on the ground, working assiduously to ensure that March 2nd, the People's Progressive Party is returned to power. Joe, welcome to the program.
Eddie, thank you for having me here. It's been a long time.
It
we haven't had
has
a
been a while.
conversation together. Thank you for having me here, and look forward to enlighten our viewers on the matters that we will discuss very shortly.
I want us to go back and to look at pre-December 21st, 2018, and what exactly would have triggered the no confidence motion. And I know Guyanese are aware to some extent some of what has been happening since March 2015. Since May 2015, when the APNU+AFC took office, with all the promises that it would have made, they have broken all those promises. Our country, from moving from being a thriving, growing economy, a vibrant economy where job opportunities were existing, persons were able to own house lots, own their own homes, to live comfortable lives. After the elections, we've seen almost all of that disappear, and you could have seen the despair in the people of this country, the loss, the hope that they would have lost, and you know the whole quest to ensure that the country returned to some level of normalcy, to growth, and to development, so that the current generation and generations to come can live comfortable lives. Those were really missing under the Granger administration, and those by themselves, the people lost their jobs and a whole host of things would have basically motivated the confidence motion.
Eddie, the thing is, what you just highlighted, when all of that was happening pre-18th of December, 21st of December 2018, is that the apologies of David Granger, they were able to separate him from his government. And so what you had the spotlight on the government. And the apologists continue during that period to make the point that the president is a good man. It is his government and his ministers who are letting him down. What happened after the no confidence motion is all the spotlight moved from the government, and now 1 year hence it is on David Granger, and that has made him very uncomfortable because he cannot hide anymore. The nation is looking at him, and so the emperor right now is without clothes. So people have been able to see that, listen, this is a anti-democratic leader. This is a leader with autocratic and dictatorial tendencies. This is a leader who lies. So all this moral high ground that he had and this pedestal he was on, he was stripped of those during this period. Just I can point to, which is current, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, he's on the program 94.1. Blatant lie. The PPP waged over the period a civil war on his government. A total baloney, you know? We can go back to during the negotiations with him and the leader of the opposition to select a new chairman of GCOM. When he agreed that Mr. Jagdeo could resubmit the 18 names of the earlier 3 lists. And then 2 days after, he went again to the press after discourse with a blatant, pathetic lie, indicating that they were unable to move forward because Mr. Jagdeo had resubmitted these names that he had found unconfident. And I could go on, and therefore I know his acolytes, they don't like him to be called, you to call him a charlatan, but that is what a charlatan is. A charlatan is a liar, a deceiver, and a faker, a man who is not what he says he is. And therefore he's not able to hide anymore. We have seen him, the country has seen him. People who up to last year defended him, today they refuse to defend him. And you more than I are on the social media circuit. And you will know you had all of these people by the hundreds who came to the defense of Granger and the APNU coalition government. Today they're silent. Today, for that matter, some of them make snide remarks criticizing the government and its management. And so that is what was useful for this no confidence motion. That the man who professed himself to be a moralist, to be a man of integrity and decency, today is the most indecent person. And no morality he has eschewed over the period. And of course, attempting to run us into some state that is not democratic. The important thing through all of that, Eddie, it is the fight of the PPP. We were able to, and people would not want to give us the compliments, so I would give us the compliment. We were able to stand between David Granger and his attempt to take us into dictatorship. The PPP was able to do that.
But Joe, I'm glad you made the point, because 12 months later, I think one of the important things for the Guyanese people, and is the fact that this period would have allowed us, and you made mention of that, to see the true nature of David Granger and those that he would have surrounded himself with. Talking about those as his ministers and those, and it brings out the true nature of the PNC. It brings out the true nature where there is no respect for the Constitution, refusal to maintain law and order, or for the respect for the rule of law, I should say, totally ignoring the will of the people, because we cannot lose sight of the fact that the opposition People's Progressive Party represents 50%, at least with the last elections, of the population. And I know that number has grown phenomenally. A significant part of those who supported Granger, who were caught off guard by his empty promises, thinking that, he would bring something new to the table, would have moved.
Yeah,
there is a serious shift.
Even with the broken promises, they still held on. But they broke with him when they saw the anti-democratic, the dictatorial behavior. Many of them today who are critics of David Granger and his government, they sought to hide undercover. They still continue to make the point that the guy is a decent man, he's a good man. The point is, all of that has gone through the window. And we have seen him for what he is. That he double speaks, he changes things that he said this week. He said opposite to that the following week. And he said something to one community of people, And when he speaks to another community of people, he says something different about the same matter. And therefore, he's an unworthy and untrustworthy leader. The other important issue that we cannot lose sight of is that in the period since democracy was restored, he is the first president who is governing illegally. He has no mandate to govern, at least from 18th of September 2019, when all the issues based on the courts would have come to an end. So presently, he is an illegal president. His government is illegal.
Who's operating as though it's business as usual?
As business, but it does not take away from the fact that people in the country, they recognize that the external international community, they recognize that, and therefore they have stayed arm's length from the government. They're not doing any business with the government because they recognize that this is an illegal government. The other issue, people used to try to separate him from the corruption. The fact is, he is part and parcel of the corruption. That also we have seen over this period, this 1 year period. Because let us look at all this issue of land giveaway and so. It is the president whose hand signed off on all of these leases for state lands, or he authorizes someone to do it on his behalf. The issue of state land fall directly at the foot of the president of Granger. And so the corruption, he cannot look in the case of the Patterson that was housing minister, when she was giving out the ministry that she ran, giving out contract to her husband, he removed her and he gave some banal excuse about he's moving her in the public interest. If it's a corrupt practice, if it is a practice that is not transparent, that is what it is. He naively said moving her for public interest. The issue now with the new housing minister, it is before him. I'm sure his advisors would have advised, what has he done? Right? Patterson, the other Patterson, putting $9 million, the Chinese putting in his private bank. All of these things, they got to use episode of giving contract to herself. So, he cannot anymore separate himself from the corruption of the government. They're real, and they're stark, and they're before him. He's aware of it, but he does nothing about it. He has not dismissed a minister for corrupt practices. He has not encouraged his ministers to subscribe to the law, to submit their declarations to the Ethnic Relations, to the Integrity Commission. He himself, this man of high moral standing, he himself over the years has not. And therefore no more. And that's the reason why, Eddie, he and his lackeys and cronies, they're fearful to go into the communities to speak to people. Because what can they say to people? What can they say to people? He don't know. The old saying is that an accessory to crime is as guilty as the criminal. So Granger is an accessory to the crime and corruption of his government. And he is culpable because at the end of the day, it is he that leads that government. So you have a government that is illegal, a government that is corrupt, a government that is steep in nepotism and cronyism, and all the issues you could talk. Of course, a government that has neglected the Guyanese people. Think about it, Eddie. In weeks, a government official has not spoken to people of this country. I mean, you're in the media more than I, but I was out a lot. But what have any minister been saying to this country? You understand me? We have a government and a president that is not speaking. We're just drifting, going along, on autopilot here. There's no guidance from the government as how the state is functioning in any given area at any given time.
The fact is that I don't think we even have a government. What we have is really a group of people who are refusing to give up power, who don't know in which direction they should go. Um, but what they do know is that they're using every single opportunity, because you're seeing contracts are being handed out. Everything that are being done, every single act of this government with regards to contracts and so forth, are illegal, are against the Constitution, are against the rule of law. But they continue to operate in such a manner as though, like I said, business as usual. And because there are no oversight, checks and balances in the absence of the National Assembly, in the absence of Parliament, that they're utilizing the opportunities, and you're seeing fancy houses going up for people. You're seeing lands being given to ministers and to friends of ministers and to cronies of the coalition, large plots of land.
Importantly, Eddie, the contracts that are given out present in the period, it is not contracts that are given out deliberately to give service to the people. It is contracts to make money available to cronies of the government and for ministers to participate in kickback. That is what all of these contracts are about. It is not so. If you go around, a lot of the contracts that are being given out, they have not been executed. In some instances, contractors have already drawn the checks, the total 100% of, and the contracts have not started.
Have not started.
So in the stage whereby the Ministry of Finance is cutting the checks to make them available for contracts, and that is the corrupt practice. So the contracts is not, let me repeat, they are not giving services to people via these contracts.
It's basically a hustle.
It's a hustle. It's corruption at the highest level, making monies available to people who can give kickback to government officials. Because if you look around, where's the service? Healthcare, where's the service? So I've gone into the interland, and so a lot of the health centers, 8 months they have no drugs and medical supplies. Yet you have contracts
being awarded
for drugs and medical supplies when you're in Georgetown here. I have gone into the interland. You have infrastructure talking about all these interland roads to be done and are being done. I've gone into the interland, and I see the state of the roads. So yes, you have all of this conversation and you have all of this signing, but there is no service being given to people. So that is what you have. Everybody's on a hustle because they are sure, as night follows day, that come the 3rd of March 2020, they would not be in government. And that is what is their primary concern, not the welfare of the people of Guyana.
So I think if we want us to examine the past 12 months in particular, Joe, I think one of the major things is the fact that David Granger nakedly denied the people of this country their right to elect a government of their choice. That is essentially what has been done. I mean, elections should have been held 3 months after. They themselves, on the evening of March 21st, accepted that the government would have fallen and that elections must be held within 3 months. Then, of course, they came up with the Jumbie mathematics from Nigel Hughes, who said 34 is the majority, and with all the half man and all sorts of things. And then they start finding excuse after excuse. And despite the CCJ definitively ruled and set out that elections should be held within a certain time, and to clarify all the matters, there were deliberate and continuous attempts using agents that they have as commissioners at GCOM to try to deny the people of this country their right to elect a government.
And that is the reason, that is why I'm saying that a lot of people, they cut loose Granger when they saw the dictatorial and autocratic instinct stepping in. Of course, I told them that since 2011. You know, the thing is that I've said over and over, nothing that Granger does that is anti-democratic, autocratic, and dictatorial, nothing that he does surprises me, because I indicated to people who were talking about falling in for change that that is how we would operate. And therefore, that is where we are at the moment. And so the no confidence motion, Eddie, with all the pain and travails, it was useful for the people of Guyana to see that the PNC, whatever name it has, the animal is the same animal. That is the fundamental issue that this 1 year, with all the pain we have gone through, the PNC is what it is. It has not changed. Under no cloak, under no garb, it is the same animal. Who wants to get into power? Who wants to stay into power without being elected? That is the historical parameters of the PNC. Want to get into power and want to stay in the power without being elected by the people of this country.
But I before I move on to the next issue, Joe, because you just have 30 minutes and I think we're almost through 20 thereabout. But what I want to say, if one is to examine the last 12 months, and by extension the last 4.5 years or so, every action of Granger and his gang of hustlers around him would demonstrate to the people of this country why the PNC, or like you said, whatever name they call themselves, APNU, AFC, whatever you call them, why they should not be trusted, why they should not be trusted with. And these actions that the actions of the coalition prior to oil, because that's the next thing I want to deal with, nakedly, the corruption, the cronyism, the nepotism, and the siphoning off of state resources. One can only imagine what it will be when Guyana start benefiting from revenues as a result of the oil industry. So clearly, I think the past 4 years and more so the last 12 months demonstrated to the people of this country why the APNU AFC should not be re-elected at no cost, should not be in government. They have absolutely no interest in the people of this country to ensure that they take actions that are going to benefit you. They try to give you the impression that they're working in your interest, but when you look at it,
they're working in their own interest. In their own interest.
That is why I'm moving to oil and gas now. The whole fanfare about first oil and declaring a day of what is it, National Day of Petroleum, or Natural Petroleum Day, whatever it's called, all the fanfare, all the celebration. But what the people of this country need to ask ourselves, first and foremost, are we ready? Are we ready? What happened to the local content policy? What happened to a proper system of checks and balances to ensure that the earnings from the oil and gas industry will actually benefit the people of this country? I want to ask the people before I bring you in, Joe, do you know, is there any clear plan from the APNU AFC? They had 4 years. It's in 2015 they found out that ExxonMobil found oil. They knew oil, we're going to be pumping oil at some point. Is there a clear plan as to what the revenues from the oil and gas industry will be used for? Are they saying to you how the resources are going to be managed? The oversight of this? There is nothing.
Eddie, the thing is this. You know, I see Granger behind some podium speaking to this day you talk about. It is, charlatans are filled with a lot of form and no substance. That is to hoodwink people. And that is the guy, you can say what you want about him. He has mastered the art as how to be a charlatan. So he come out, you know, utilizing the day maybe to cover up the 1 year anniversary of the no confidence motion, to cover up the fact that he's illegally in government, making what you call a natural petroleum day and all the whatever. That does not change that. Does not change that you're in a government illegally. And so, importantly, with all the fanfare, it must be remembered that ExxonMobil came here under the watch of the People's Progressive Party. That is important for Guyanese to note and to remember, that it was the People's Progressive Party civic that brought ExxonMobil here and gave them a contract to do exploration out in Guyana. The important issue is that, as you mentioned, since 2015, first, when there were inclinations that oil was found, and I think a statement was made by then Minister of Natural Resources, Robert Posad, if you recall. Bulkan indicated that the PPP was just gimmick coming from the PPP. He had said that at that time.
Election gimmick.
Election gimmick. Now, 5 years into all of that, 4 years, and what has happened? We are about going into 5 years. Jordan has established a National Resource Fund that gives him
Full control.
all the power to do everything with our resources. He has created an incestuous relationship with the Bank of Guyana to receive the oil proceeds. Of course, we go back to the infamous 18 million signing bonus that was denied. And people have said enough about the contract, how it benefits the oil companies substantially, and not Guyana and the people of Guyana. And now we have, following in the footsteps of Granger, who said at that time he did not even, at the time, read the ExxonMobil contract as president. So when people were asking him about questions about this contract that Trotman signed and they had hidden, Granger at the time said he couldn't comment because he is president. Didn't read the contract as yet. What we have now, Granger supervising something you call the Department of Energy, and you have Mr. Bino, who's the CEO or whatever it is. When Mr. Bino speaks, my head spins, because you don't know what he's likely to say that don't make sense about this matter. It's like he's saying, listen, we didn't inform the people of Guyana. At the same time, he's talking about transparency. He's saying we would have informed them after we tie up a deal with who is going to buy the oil from us. That is what he's saying. You would want to think transparency suggests that from the day one, when you're seeking to have face-to-face conversations with companies, the people of Guyana is aware how you plan to, or one of the plans you have, how we can sell our proceeds, our oil that will be given to Guyana. And so every day under the supervision of Granger, as we are the issue of a local content, we have the issue about Guyanese working within the petroleum industry, basically under slave-like conditions, the type of salaries. People have come to this office who said $72,000 a month. They work for on the ship, away from their families, and so the government and the Ministry of Labor, they have not looked at it to see how people have said that, listen, the oil companies, they sign the subsidiaries and the agents of the oil company and the contractors, you have to sign contract with them denying your right to representation by unions. And all of that is happening. And so even the gloating about Guyanese are employed in the oil industry, what are they employed to do, and what type of remunerations they're getting from these companies, equating it to the foreigners. That is the fundamental issue.
I mean, we're almost out of time, but I want to say, Joe, and I want to make this point. Like you rightly said, the contract, or ExxonMobil came to this country as a result of then President, now the late Janet Jagan, in 1999, who signed that contract to allow Exxon to explore. So she initiated a process. That's visionary thinking. If Granger is to celebrate anything about oil and gas, he should be celebrating the giveaway of our national patrimony through Trotman with 1% and 2% royalties, recoverable, 1% recoverable. He should be celebrating the clandestine way in which he attempted to sell oil. He should be celebrating how exactly his team probably intended to siphon off monies from the $18 million. If you look at it in retrospect, David Granger and his gang of hustlers have not done anything to ensure the oil and gas sector is protected and the revenues from oil and gas can come and benefit the people of this country.
Substantially. The important thing is substantial benefit, because, that is what we want. And for us at the PPP, everything that we will do in government is to ensure that the rights of the Guyanese people are protected and the revenue from the petroleum industry benefit our people substantially.
Thank you very much, Joe, for being here, and I want to thank you very much for joining us. We're going to be back here, God's willing, next week to continue to have discussions with you. Until then, have a good rest of the evening, and all the best for the holiday seasons. Bye for now.